Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at a remake or a reprint or something, a minor modification to a game that came out a long time ago from Mac Gerdts and PD Verlag Games. This is Antike 2. Now this was released, if I'm not mistaken, at Essen last year, both in a full box version and in a upgrade pack type version, so you can upgrade your version of Antike 1. I'm pointing because mine is right over there. Now you can upgrade in order to play with some new rules, some minor board modifications, and just a couple of different changes to how setup and minor things are handled throughout the game. So real quick, we'll take a look at what you get inside of this box. We'll take a look at how the game plays and some of the minor changes that have been made to the game in order to improve gameplay and maybe speed things up a little bit. And then we'll come back and get my opinions on Antike 2 as compared to Antike 1 and just as a game by itself at the end. So here you can see the board for Antike 2. Now this looks very similar to the board for Antike, except for there are some minor changes. I believe there's some minor relocations of some of the resources, but most importantly on this board are these little ship icons on some of the water spaces. You'll see a few of them spread out here. You'll also note that these are all of the water spaces that do not contain an area that has a city. So if you can't produce a resource in that area, there will be a ship here, and this ship area, or this water area, will be worth double points when you're trying to get the persona that has to do with holding 7 different ship regions. So this technically counts as 2 if you hold that area. The other side of this board is another map. So on this side we have the Orient map. And in the Orient there are some other minor changes. Again, you still have these little ship things so that holding these areas are worth double. But you're also going to have some cities that show all 3 of the different resources. And when you build in these territories, you get to choose which type of city you build, and therefore get to choose which type of resource it will produce when you take that action on the rondel. So now that we've taken a look at the board, I'm going to flip back to the basic board, and we will set up in order to look at how the game plays. So here you can see Antike 2 all set up for a 4-player game. Now the setup of the game will change depending on the number of players that you have, so this isn't a static setup or anything like that. If you have fewer players, these cities will be in different locations, as will the temples that start on the board, which are kind of a new feature here. There didn't used to be temples on the board at the start of the game, so now there are kind of neutral temples that you can take over as part of the destroying a temple persona that you need to get in the game in order to try and win. So that's another one of the changes you'll be seeing in the game as it stands in the second version. Now, the gameplay is pretty similar to how it was in Antike 1, or Antike, but they've incorporated some changes that they had from Antike Duellum and put them into this version of the game, and I think it's helped streamline it and speed it up a little bit. Each player is going to start the game, and they're going to be dealt a nation card. This person got Egypt, and it tells them for the different player numbers in the game where their starting cities will be. So this is the green player. They have a iron city here, they have a marble city in Alexandria, and they have a gold city right kind of in the same area. And each player is dealt a different nation with different starting cities. Each player will also have some of their armies, and they'll have some fleets that they can place out during the game, and then they're going to have markers for additional cities, some little technology markers that they can place if they get some technologies out in the game, and some starting resources. They start with 3 marble, 3 gold, and 3 iron. The other resources you can see right here, we have some extra gold, iron, and marble. We have a bunch of temples that players can build, and then we have these coins, and coins were a resource in the previous game. They're kind of a wild resource, but how you earn them now is going to have changed, so you'll see that as we go through the rules. Now, you're going to determine a first player, and the person to the right of the first player is going to get another new thing. This is the Bologna, or Bologna, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, card. But basically, this is a card that's going to give a player, when they take the militia action, an extra militia for free. So it's a free militia. And after you take the action, if you have this card, you pass it to the player on your right. This is not optional. You must use the card. So the player to the right of the start player gets this card, and it's a little bit of a benefit when they first use the militia action. Now, how are you going to play the game? Well, of course, it uses the common Mac Gerdts rondel. So you can see the rondel over here. The rondel is pretty much as it's always been. And on your first turn, you have the option of starting on any one of these positions on the rondel. They are going to be 3 different resource production: marble, iron, and gold. There's 2 maneuver or move spaces. There's 1 militia space, 1 temple building space, and a science space. If you're to take any one of the resource building spaces on your first turn, as I said, you can go anywhere. On future turns, you can move up to 3 spaces for free, or pay 1 extra resource per extra space you want to move. So in theory, if you started in a space, you can move 3 for free and then pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get back to where you started. That would cost you 5 resources. If you're to take any one of the resource production spaces, you're going to look out on the board at the cities that you control. So right now, as green, I have 1 iron, I have 1 marble, and I have 1 gold city. Each one of these would produce 1 resource of the appropriate type. So if I'm on iron, I'm going to produce 1 iron, and I would take that and add it to my supply. Now, unlike previous versions of Antique, not only do you get the 1 iron, but you will always get 1 coin. Coins were earned differently before, so this is a major change to the game. Every time you produce, you will get 1 coin. And these coins are a wild resource. So if you were to pick up iron in this turn, you would get 1 iron and 1 coin. Now, there are some things that can modify this. One, of course, building more cities would give you more iron or more gold or more marble, whatever it might be. But also you can build temples throughout the game, and you can build them in your cities. So if I was to have built a temple in this iron city, instead of getting 1 iron, I would get 3, because each city that has a temple in it produces 3 of that good. And then I would still get, of course, the coin that I picked up from before. So that is how production works. Templum is going to require that you've collected 5 marble. So if you've collected 5 marble, this is how you're going to build a temple. You would go to Templum and you would pay your 5 marble, or it could be 4 marble and a coin, or 3 marble and 2 coins, whatever it is. And of course you can build multiple. This will allow you to build temples in the cities that you've already built, which of course gives them more production, will allow you to build more resources there, and makes them harder to take over from other players. Not only will building temples give you more resources, the ability to build more guys into your cities and protect them, but it's also one of the potential victory point conditions. Of course, the point of the game is to get to a certain number of victory points first. In the case of a 4-player game, that number is 9. And you're going to do this by achieving or by earning personas, which are these cards you can see over here. There are various different ways to earn personas, one of which is building temples. So, for example, the card right here says that if you own 3 temples, you'll get this card, which is achieving a persona, and would move you up on this track here to 1 victory point. We'll talk a little bit more about this track in a little bit. There are various other ways to earn these, and I'll talk about them shortly. So, building temples is done on the Templum space and requires 5 marble per temple you would like to build. We're going to go ahead and skip ahead to militia here. The militia space is what allows you to buy resources or buy guys that you're going to use in order to build cities or attack other players' cities. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you kind of have armies, which are the little guys, and you have fleets, which are little ships here. When you land on militia, you may purchase as many of these as you like using iron. So that's what the iron resource is for, and each one you would like to purchase costs 2. A reminder that if you have the Bologna or Bologna card here, you are required to use this to get 1 extra either army or fleet to build out onto the board. So, you may turn in as many iron and of course coins as you would like in order to build militia, 1 into each of your cities if you would like, maximum, unless you've built a temple there, and then you may build 3 into that area. Of course, the fleets must go adjacent to water, while the armies must go into land. Stepping ahead to moving or maneuvering, this would allow you to move the guys you've already placed on the board. So just for fun, let's go ahead and place some guys out onto the board, saying green had previously built them, and say that we're on a moving turn. When you move, each of your guys may move 1 space. This includes guys on land and fleets in the water. So moving your guys, for example, moving from here to here would be 1 across the red line, and moving from here to here would be 1 across the red line. I can also move my ship 1 space across a blue line, so I could move into a sea area with a city, or I could move into a sea area that count as 2 sea areas for the purpose of getting a persona. And we'll talk about those personas very, very shortly here. Now, another thing you can do at the end of all of your turns after you've moved on the rondel and taken your action is establish new cities. It doesn't matter which action you've taken out here, you can always do this as long as you have a guy in an area that's uncontested. Well, actually, it can even be contested, doesn't matter, but you can build here by paying 1 marble, 1 stone, and 1 iron. So it's going to cost you 3 resources to build a new city, and you would put a city out here like this, showing that you now have a city in that area. Building cities can earn you a persona, so if you ever get to 5 cities owned, let's say that we built 2 cities this turn, and now we have a city here, and the 3 that we started with, we have 5 cities, and it will give you the king persona, which is worth 1 victory point, moving you up on this track. This would happen again when you got to 10 cities, and 15 and 20, again, multiples of 5. So, like the temples, if I were to build 3 temples and then own 6 temples, I would get 2 of those cards, earning me 2 victory points. Other reasons you might want to move around the board are to maneuver your ships out into sea areas. And there is a persona that is going to be called the Navigator for obtaining ships in 7 different sea areas, remembering that these count as 2. So if I had 2, 4, 6, and then 1 right here, that would be 7, giving me one of these cards. Note that you'll need many ships to do this, but it's worth one of these personas, which is worth a victory point. The other reason you may want to move your guys is to defend or to attack somebody else's cities. Cities on the board that are unprotected, meaning there's no guys there, have a defensive 1. And you can move 1 guy into that area to destroy that city and build your own city there for free. Doesn't cost you the resources. If there are defending units in those areas, let's say there was an opponent's boat in here, it would now have a defense of 2, plus 1 for each piece of wood there. So now, instead of being 1 defense, it's 2. Having a temple in that area gives it a defense of 3 to start off with. So now this guy cannot take over the city because he's only got an attack of 1, and the city has a defense of 3. But if we had 2 more guys up in this area, let's say that this ship had sailed up here somehow, we can now attack this area because we have 3 guys there. When you do so, you would destroy the temple, you would replace the city, and all of the guys you used to attack that city up to the defense of the city would be destroyed, sent back to the supply. So you'll see that it's very expensive by getting guys and using them to destroy a city. It becomes very expensive in order to clear that city off of the board. However, this is one way that you can get the destroy a temple persona, which is out here on the board. You must destroy temples in order to get this persona, which will give you a victory point in the game. Now, there are other temples that start on the board, so you'll see that we had one starting right here in a neutral area. You could destroy this one, and that is worth a victory point as well. So it depends on whether you want to attack your other players to take over their resource production areas, or whether you'd like to start off kind of a little bit more neutral and take out the beginning temple for a victory point. Now, the last space on this board is the science area, or scientia, which is going to allow you to learn know-hows that are over on this side of the board. And there are 8 different know-hows, 3 of which must be learned before the 3 below them, and then 2 that can be learned at any time. In order to learn these, you must land on the scientia area, and you must pay either 6 if you're the first person, in this case, or 9 or 10, the higher number if you're the first person to learn that science, or the lower number if you're the second person or later to earn that science. And these will give you special abilities throughout the game. So this could be the ability to trade resources 2 for 1. Basically, you trade 2 of any resource for 1 that you need. Or if you build this and then get the upgraded ability, it's 3 resources of any type for 2 resources of any type to get the resources that you need. So, a little bit of trading in order to get you resources that you can use instead of the ones you have. The ones in the middle here, Metallum and Moneta, are going to allow you to get extra resources anytime you take a resource earning action. So if I were to earn 1 marble, if I had this one right here, I would earn 2 marble. Or if I had the better ability, I would earn 3. So it either adds 1 or 2, depending on which level you have. These 2 right here, which we have Regnum and Res Publica, are going to give you additional defense to your city. So plus 1 defense or plus 2 defense to any city you have on the board, so it's harder for players to take them over from you. Strata and Navigation, or Navigatio, however they say it, are going to increase the movement of your land or sea units by 1 space. So normally you can move 1 space with each unit. These will allow you to move 2. Additionally, if you are the first person to learn any of these, you're going to get a Scholar know-how, or a Scholar persona, which will give you a victory point in the game. Now, this track isn't just a victory point tracker, it's mostly a victory point tracker, but what it also does is it has some kind of setbacks if you go above 2 victory points. Anybody who's early in the game and is below 2 victory points, 2 or below, gets an extra defense to all of their cities, but as soon as you earn your 3rd, you're a little bit more of an open target. That extra defense goes away, and you're easier to be hit. Now that's the basics of pretty much every action on the rondel, covering really all of the situations that can arise. So your turn will basically consist of, on your first turn, taking any action, but on subsequent turns, moving 1 to 3 spaces, or more if you would like to pay for the movement options, taking the action that you land on, then checking to see if you would like to build any cities with resources or units that you have out on the board in areas that don't currently have a city built, or, of course, resolving any conflicts if you happen to have moved. And then, finally, you're going to move on to the end of the turn, where you'll check and see if you won any of the personas, be it getting a new know-how, building 5 cities, destroying a temple, owning 3 temples, or being on 7 different sea areas, or having 7 different points worth of sea area. There is one final know-how, which only one player can earn, which is learning all of the know-hows on the board. This is the final persona that you can get from learning all of the know-hows, so only one player will get this, but it's a final one that you can get to earn you a victory point. You'll keep taking turns in this manner until one player manages to get to the set end condition, which in the case of 4 players is 9 victory points, but can be more or fewer with fewer or more players. And that, of course, is Antique 2. And there you have it. That is Antique 2. Very, very similar to Antique in reality. They just took some of the minor changes, as I mentioned earlier, that they made in Antique Duellum, the 2-player version of Antique, and added them to Antique 2 from Antique 1, and some other minor tweaks here and there, as well as adding the Orient map that adds the new type of city that you can build anything on. So there's a lot of different things kind of slightly modified here. Of course, the sea areas that count as 2 help speed up that whole object of getting 7 different sea areas, or 7 different points worth of sea areas. So I like that quite a bit. The kind of variable setup that happens with different numbers of players is interesting. I don't remember how it was handled in Antique 1, so I'm not going to say it's new, but I liked the way that the setup was done in this one, and I definitely liked the starting temples, which also help speed things up a little bit. Before, it was quite some time before you could get to the point of getting a persona for destroying a temple, because you had to wait for somebody to, 1, build a temple, then you had to move over to that temple, which was not always close to you, then you had to build up the forces to destroy it, and of course finally destroy it. Now, that's a little bit mediated, or mitigated, I should say, by having temples on the board to start. So if you were positioned pretty well at the beginning of the game, you could theoretically go out there and destroy a temple fairly early on and get yourself a persona. So another game speed up. The fact that you have some protection from being attacked early on in the game. Not really a guarantee that you're not attacked, but some protection in the terms of if you have less than 2 personas or victory points, it's harder to attack you, is nice. It slows down the kind of bashing on somebody at the beginning of the game, but I think overall speeds the game up because each player has the ability to develop a little bit more before they end up in a conflict. So, very good. All in all, I think everything helps streamline the game. All of these changes help streamline Antique 1 to Antique 2 and make it a very fast game to play. The box still says 90 to 120 minutes. I feel that it plays faster than that. That could be because I'm experienced in it, or it could be because it actually sped it up. But I think all of the changes help streamline it to make it a little bit more smooth in the flow of how the game goes. So, if that sounds good to you, check it out. That's Antique 2, available either in the full box version or as an upgrade pack for your copy of Antique.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.